feel like I feel like it's everybody knows everybody here. So, but I guess Rob is the Director of Security Compliance, and Jen is the Senior Director of Engineering at Snagajob. As many of you guys know, Snagajob was acquired, and I was thinking in 2016.
It's been a year and a month. Not that I'm tracking.
Acquired in 2016, and anytime there's an acquisition, there's change afoot. And contrary to what most people thought, basically, Snagajob wasn't going to disassemble the pieces. They actually decided to. Jen just told me last week they've actually decided to double the engineering team over here, which is a good situation. I got the same story at Booz Allen. We're actually going to do a story on this, but Booz Allen not only came in, but used a lot of their resources to kind of increase staffing, just like Snagajob is doing here in Charleston. I think it's interesting. First of all, you got a situation where a lot of people are just migrating to the cloud. Now we actually have a situation. We're going to hear from these two guys about migrating from one cloud to the next, I guess, which could be a challenge. So I'll let Jen and Rob take it away. And as you guys know, these things are recorded, so we'll probably push it on Monday, Tuesday, just as soon as we get back from Mike. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Packed house, always exciting. So yeah, Rob's title is actually no-ger, like Rob Nozier, because his job is to say no to anything we ask for as we do this work. But he's going to keep me honest throughout this presentation. So this is actually our second cloud migration from GoGrid to Rackspace under PeopleMatter. And then we're doing it again. It was so much fun that we decided to do it a second time. Why on earth would we do this, right? And especially while we're continuing to deliver products and support our customers. So we merged a year ago. Wow, like your eyes right now are amazing. We have two completely different stacks, right? That means different sets of technology, different training, different roles, everything. And there is some overlap. So if you look on the logic layer, right, we're both using some Python, we're both in C#, Docker. There's pieces there that overlap, but not enough. And especially down as you get to the bottom with support and hosting, right? So there is overlap. We actually use data loop and PagerDuty as well. That's a lot to manage, right? You look at this, and it doesn't even tell you that on the PeopleMatter side, we have 70 servers, and on the Snagajob side, there's 700. So, right, we merged, and during due diligence, you sit down and you go through all these parts, and you talk about what we have, what you have, how's that going to work. It's not until you actually are one company that you really sit down and go, well, now what? So we started with this look and realized we needed to change. So why? Well, it lowers our staff needs, right? We don't need as many DevOps guys trying to understand two whole different platforms and two ways of doing deploys and all the piece parts, PagerDuty here, VictorOps there. We need to consolidate. We need, right, I mentioned we were using Data Loop, there's Datadog. We're monitoring and tracking on two different systems. It's just hard if you're going to have an incident or you're just trying to keep an eye on what's going on, consolidate your data, and really have a better picture of your platform. You have to bring it all together. In my comment about Rob Nozier, we have data in two different places. And if we want to push our product forward, we need all that data together. A job posting on the PeopleMatter side better be a job posting on the Snagajob side. There's power in that. There's all that data has to be able to be consolidated so we can really look at trends, understand the data, and understand the needs of our client. While we're in two different, completely different isolated stacks on two different clouds, it's just not working. So we need to be able to bring it all together. And then also, we need to open a path. We need to update our SSO model and security. So we need one infrastructure to enable us to move forward. And then let's talk cost. Right, scaling, reserved instances. There's things that we get with AWS that just weren't there on the Rackspace side. There were different benefits. We'll get to that in a second. But it will let us auto scale, grow their instances, prepaid, and actually be, Rob, we'll talk about being in the cloud versus of the cloud. So our Rackspace environment, we're in the cloud, but we're not really taking advantage of a lot of those things. We're still managing a Rabbit server, right? So let's start actually leveraging that technology and having someone else focus on the infrastructure so we can focus on products. And then, right, this is the part that really appeals to our ET. Less time, it's cost. Development, velocity, less time spent on infrastructure. You know, there's one dev stack. We brought in training for Angular 2. It's better if we have everyone doing the same technologies, right? And then SSO. We need to solve problems once. We don't need to solve them for this stack and for this stack. We really need to be able to just get there faster and focus all of our resources on the same problems. And then the really hard problems, encryption standards, we have to redo encryption. How do we handle that, right? Do we go to a key store, manage key store? Well, if we're going to do that, again, it's easier if you're doing it one time across one platform. Anything to add, Rob?
Yeah, I think what's important here is that we did sit down and figure out what's our motivation, what are we trying to do, right? It wasn't just, hey, Amazon's cool, let's go there. It was, we laid out some very specific things that we wanted to see as the benefits of what we're doing. We don't want to manage our own Elasticsearch cluster anymore. We don't want to manage our own RabbitMQ cluster anymore. Those are things that we don't want to manage our own Docker boxes and mess with the Docker containers registering into a service. We don't want to build all of that ourselves anymore. That's stuff that when you get to the question of, am I doing a lift and shift of everything I'm doing here and putting that into some cloud provider, or am I trying to take advantage of what are the real features of this cloud provider that they have available to us? That's where we were able to make some choices that bumped up the value of this move quite a bit, because we're, like Jen says, we're looking for how to develop software and be a high-speed software company, not how to be a hosting infrastructure company or a DevOps company. That's stuff that we don't need to be experts in. We want the business to move fast and her dev teams to move fast.
So this is really important too, to be able to go back to why, because you kind of have to, go back and have a vision so that you can kind of recheck what's the point of this, because I know my devs would like to rewrite everything, so every dev would. So you really have to make sure what's our primary focus and how are we going to get there so that you don't get distracted along the way.
Jen, might be a little premature to ask this question, but when you all looked at basically migrating to Amazon, did you all look at other providers?
The real decision maker for Amazon versus something else is that those 600 Snagajob servers were already there.
Okay.
And that actually impacts some of the later decisions as well, because Snagajob completed a migration from physical infrastructure to Amazon directly, and that had just finished at the beginning of 16 when the merger was, or the acquisition was the middle of 16, right? So they had just finished moving all of their stuff to AWS at the point that PeopleMatter comes into the picture.
Right. So that's a good segue. Thank you. So measure twice, cut once. So we didn't just jump in, right? So Rob actually went up and spent time during, he used a hack day to kind of do the first pass, gut check, proof of concept. Can we even do this, and how are we going to do it? What happens if we just lift and shift everything we have and just put it in AWS, right? Which we realized was viable, could be done. We could look at cost savings. So you could actually go back to our executive team and say, look, we know we can do this. At a bare minimum, we can do a lift and shift, and then we can actually start talking about cost savings, what's actually going to cost to make that change, and get some buy-in, right? You can't do this as a grassroots effort. Nothing of this scale, right? It's too impactful. So you really have to take that first pass. What are the challenges? What do you really have to look at? And what are you committing to, right? It's a huge impact to the company. So if you fall behind or if you get it wrong, it's a big deal. So it was a good was on paper, walked through it. How does that work? So once we knew it was viable, this is, okay, we can do this. At the very least, we'll do a lift and shift. We came back around and we got a lot of people in the room, including the people who had been through the first AWS migration on the Snagajob side. So we brought in a ridiculous number of people at times, it feels like. The people who had been through it before, from the DBAs and their DevOps team, all of our guys, our engineers that really understand our platform, and sat down and just laid out this massive timeline of dependencies and what's it really going to take and what has to be here first and how are we going to do this, right? And what can we leverage? Are there things that make sense versus lift and shift? What makes sense that we could start to move? The biggest part there was experience, right? We did have some on our side. We had done a merger from GoGrid to Rackspace 3 years ago. So we had been through it a little bit, and we had cleaned up our servers then and kind of realigned where things were, which did help. And started laying out a plan, and we knew it was going to be fast, right? We have to continue to deliver. How does that work? How does that look? And then afterwards, we were able to come back, really get more specific about what's this going to take. There's a few things that we actually looked at. What's the realistic timeline? You know, it wasn't going to take a quarter to get this work done. It's actually taking all year. What are the pieces that we could commit to? We set milestones so that they would know when we were on time or not on time. And then realistic cost. So it's not just that, you know, I pulled off 2 engineers and just put them on the side and said, your job is anything AWS, right? Anything that's part of the migration, code changes we have to make behind the scenes, this is your job, please go do this. But there's also impact to the existing teams, right? So it slows them down because we have to recheck things. We're changing pieces way down under the hood, and we've got to make sure that we're not breaking anything existing in the cloud. So really having to document, lay out, again, repeat our vision.
Yeah, I think that's important. And the thing, the first time I did an AWS migration was 2009. We were, everybody was a rookie at that point, right, including Amazon. They were still experimenting with whether that was a viable part of their business or not. We learned a lot of stuff by accident. We had security problems with boxes by accident, just because we were everybody trying it then was a rookie. Today, you know, you can't throw a rock across the street without hitting somebody who's done something in AWS, right? So the key to, and whether you're going to Google or Azure or AWS, it's the successful projects are the ones who find somebody who knows how to navigate that cloud infrastructure, right? There are unique things about how Amazon operates, how to optimize your cost in Amazon, what kind of options there are there as far as services you can take on and ways you can architect your networks and your server builds. That's stuff that a guide of some kind who's done this before is going to make a huge difference in how much you can save by adopting some particular cloud, and how many, you know, rookie mistakes you're going to make and have to back out and try a different way, right? So in this situation, there were several architect level folks at Snagajob who just finished the migration on their side and had up-to-date knowledge about exactly the right way to, or exactly the optimal way that they wanted to take advantage of AWS. If you don't have that, there are, you know, there's plenty of consulting firms who are on commission who can, you know, do a little bit of do work for you and then get paid by the cloud provider because they're they're increasing sales for the cloud provider, right? So there are ways to get expert help without spending a whole lot of money, but that's an essential part of being successful with this. It's not something that you have to figure out on your own. Obviously you can, but this is how to get the most value the fastest. The other thing I'd say is that that part on the right, what Jen said is, this can't be done in a vacuum, and she used the term grassroots, right? This isn't something that if I put some DevOps guys in a corner and say, hey, work on this whole migration thing, you're never going to get there. This is something that is impacting the dev teams, it's impacting product choices, it's impacting sales decisions, it's impacting the high level budget of the company, because we're talking about the macro picture of how much does it cost to run this infrastructure. And there was a lot of work on the front end to get buy-in from all of the necessary teams and make sure that they were clear on that why picture that we put up earlier, that they know exactly what we're trying to get out of it, and the realistic timeline part here is when they expect to start seeing some benefit, right? And Jen will get into some of the nitty-gritty of where we're trying to push benefit early, but setting the expectations up front and getting everybody on board is absolutely critical.
To go to some of that on, the ET and the conversations with the rest of the company, right? This is a technical audience. I've spent some time getting up in front of sales and support and everyone else and trying to explain what do we get from this, right? They know that there is a tremendous amount of resources being dedicated to this. We had to go to product, right? We originally tried, hey, we use 20% on tech debt. We're going to use that for AWS. And every single sprint, what happens? Something happens, right? There's creep. Well, can we just push that to the next sprint? So we had to say, no, we're actually taking 2 people and throwing them off. And then they're impactful. So when we have a need, it's got to be high priority. So how do you convince people, right? Let me go back real quick. Whoop. And right, how do you explain to non-technical people? They look at this and they're just like, oh my God. And you try to explain the value, right? They have no idea. So I had to bring it down to things like how many of you have stood up your, got a new laptop lately and had to do, transfer of your old stuff to your new stuff on a laptop. Try doing that 70 times, right? Bringing it down and really making a little bit more sense. Talking to them about their own struggles internally, data request, report pulling, all those things. Well, once we're all kind of in that same data layer and we're all in Snowflake, things get a little bit easier. And a good visual that I used was, we've all shuffled cards before, I hope. No gamblers in the house. But, you take your 2 stacks of cards, you bend them, and then you start to flip them and pull them together. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're starting at the very base layer on hosting, and then up through support and security, and that opens up the ability for people to kind of merge these 2 systems into one. That was beneficial because now you're getting more people at every level of the organization understanding. They're not just hearing AWS migration, it doesn't make sense. They understand what we're trying to do, right? They don't care what code we're using. They don't necessarily care about those things. What they care about is what it gets them from a business value perspective, right? Patches, releases, what does that all mean? We want to go faster. We want to be able to release faster with less impact, be able to roll back. We want to be more consistent. We want to be in the same data. Those are the messages that resonate with them. And so we had to rethink how we talked about it to make sure it made sense. So that product is supportive of it, right? So that they understand the impacts to delivery and what does that mean. And how do we communicate to the customers what's coming? Things that we're going to go into with security, if we start changing on a report server, that's customer impact. So you want to make sure that anyone in your organization that's dealing with customers, that when I talk to customers, I can talk to them about, hey, we're changing on SSO. Of course, what's the first thing they're going to ask? When? Oh, when? You're going to ask us when? When can I have that? So you can actually start to talk to them about, well, our first phase is looking for October 1, we'll be here, and then after that, we're going to start looking at glue. And then we'll start rolling that in. But we have to do the base work first. So messaging is really important, and you can't just message within the tech side of your organization. You really have to get the entire organization to buy in and understand how it matters to them so that they support it.
And quick question, Jen and Rob. So as you guys are building the business case for this and you're trying to prove ROI, when you aggregate like hard to solve cost, how long after the implementation will you see return on investment?
We're going to start seeing almost immediately with We have, is it on a future one? So we actually talked, there's one piece that we have in Armory. You want to talk about that piece? Because that's going to be the first big
So
chunk.
that's part of the plan. So one of the things that we built out, that we designed was there are pieces of the platform that we can move independently. This isn't a big bang move, right? So there's some stuff. There's in particular, she talked about that reporting server. So this is customer-facing reports where the customer logs in and munges their data and gets it out the way they want it. There's a nightly ETL that builds the reporting data behind that. That already runs in a separate data center from our primary anyway. So we can take that, move that into Amazon, get our architecture of how we're going to set up the network, how we're going to set up the security components, get all of that working in a small scale, and see some enormous value out of in savings in that part of the organization, right? In that part of the hosting platform. So we can move that, and we can draw an early success line and say, well, we just cut 40% off the cost of doing that, and the team that runs the reporting and ETL platform for all of Snagajob actually now also runs this stuff as well. So you don't have this two teams running two infrastructures two different ways. So we can start proving that, and that's your T's, right? Because now the larger parts of the migration start to look to the business owners start to look possible and feasible, and we're kind of proving ourselves early on in the project.
Yeah, those milestones are deliverables that they can actually see progress on and see value, right? So you guys are doing great with these questions. They just feed right in the next slide.
Yeah, tee it right up. That's good.
I mean, it's fantastic for us. Right, so it's easy. AWS migrate. Well, we're just going to move it all. It's so easy. So it's you don't just take everything, right? So it's just like when Rob and I were talking about how to present the slide and what to talk about, how to do this presentation, what to talk about, right? And in some ways, it's like packing up for a move. So any of you has moved house to house, you kind of look at, you could pay someone to come pack it all up and take it all and unpack it all, and that's cost, right? But no matter what you do, you're looking at what your current environment has, what your future environment has, what do I need to fix, what am I just going to forget and leave, just move away from, and then what do we have to take? What's feasible and what's not, right? So, yeah, I hate this couch, but I'm just going to take the couch with me. I'm going to need something when I get there. So some things about the PeopleMatter platform. So we have this almost 8-year-old code base. We have been breaking it apart into microservices, but there's still a good chunk of it that's still in our monolith. And we're working on it, but it's one of those things that we can't just stop and rewrite, because if you stop to rewrite that, we're not delivering value to the customers, we wouldn't be here anymore. So the deploy of that is not as nice as our Docker stuff by any means. And so there's going to be a way to fix that, right? We're moving to blue-green servers. That's something that helps us get there. We can figure out how to change the build and make that more deployable, more easily deployable, go to blue-green setups, and push that out. So we're going to fix that. Monolithic host. Our app servers are set up. We use Microsoft message queues. We also use Rabbit. But MSMQ expects to be on the same box, the same server as the web app. Yes, I know. Yes, that doesn't work in AWS. Right, and that's just been there forever. We've been kicking around. We need to pull these out. We need to deploy these. And again, we've all been here, right? We've all been there when as the dev team, you're like, you know what, we really want to pull this out. And it's like, but the customers need this feature. So we had to figure out how could we rip that part off without rewriting everything. Well, we're going to leverage Rabbit. It's clustered, it's hosted. We don't have to do that. The MSMQs are still consumers, right? So that part's there. The drivers, we had to do upgrades, right? There's pieces that we could actually upgrade in, and part of that is every time we have a release, we're pushing out a little bit so that it's not, if something goes wrong, we know what went wrong, And it's less impactful to the rest of my Scrum teams. So they're all testing and we're deploying constantly small changes and breaking up everything on one server. So right now in Rackspace we have 8 app servers. And so stuff is all over those 8 app servers. And so we're starting to pull pieces off. So our APIs, the job application piece, newer pieces are all off in Docker on different servers and distributed. And so we're looking at how can we take those parts apart, deploy them, make them a little bit more containerized and packaged up. So,
Does that challenge make sense to you guys, the way we're saying it? So there's 8 app servers, but each app server is the entire stack top to bottom, right?
except the Docker, well, not all the Docker, but yeah.
Except for what we've already moved out to Docker. So you've got 3 websites. You've got these queue services that are off to the side. We're at 19.
Not while I'm drinking the coffee, Rob.
Several
Yeah,
services.
there's like 20 services that run on there.
And so that all deploys to the same host, and there's a certain amount of persistent queue data in MSMQ that's on the local host. So deploying all of that at once every time we do a patch is its own challenge, right? So part of what we're trying to fix in the move is breaking those things out. Once we centralize the queues, the dependency of all of that stuff needing to share the same box goes away, and we can actually have those services broken off somewhere else. The 3 websites on 3 different servers we can deploy independently. We can deploy the services independently. And then the other thing that she's saying is the kind of A/B deploys, where we can stand up a new set of servers with the new version, and then just route the load balancer over to that, and then come back to these later. But we can have servers running the new code at the same time as the old code, and just kind of flush over. It gets a lot easier to do that if the servers can be transient, right? If I can also just destroy the server when I'm done with it, and not have to persist it. So those are some of the things that we chose to fix as we go through this process, because there's some huge value in how we operate and how we can kind of right size each part of the infrastructure in Amazon once it's broken out into smaller pieces.
Make sense?
Is that fair to say?
So one of the interesting things is I went back with my dev team and said, let's make a tech debt list. What do you guys think we need to do to make this move? And it was sizable. And then, right, we're going to rip out, we're going to break apart the monolith, we're going to blow out the solution, and we're going to do this, and then we're going to deploy the MSMQ services separately. And it was like, okay, all right. So realistically, what do we have to have for this move, right? Well, what we have to have that won't stop DevOps from moving forward is if we just implement Rabbit and leave our guys as consumers, we can circle back and pull that part out, and it won't be a major impediment, right? Because if we start trying to rip apart the solution and do this, then right, the tech debt list, we become a bottleneck, which we definitely don't want to be, right? We don't want to halt the entire project because we want to go, right? We want to fix all these things, and we are making progress there, but it's just a matter of prioritization and figuring that out, what has to happen, and then seeing where we're going along the same lines, right? We're getting there, we're fixing it all, we're just trying to be more strategic in which pieces we have to go first. So with AWS, we get things like, right, we can just blow away a server, bring up a brand new one. Some of the things in Rackspace, and I'm going to let Rob talk about, replace what I lost, because what we had in Rackspace wasn't necessarily there. And so a lot of times you forget what you already have, and you just jump to the next thing, and you're like, oh, I totally forgot about the security stuff. That's a problem.
This is a really, really common blind spot in adopting public cloud over more managed services and managed networks, right? Especially when the dev teams are driving it and making the choice, because those are people who are interested in rolling out code, right? And kind of the rest of the stuff just happens on its own. So if you're in a managed, where we are right now, we're in Rackspace. we have a managed firewall in front of our services in Rackspace. Rackspace is providing all of the backup and restore of the boxes, all the backup and restore of the databases, all of the network layer intrusion detection. They do antivirus, anti-malware on the boxes, manage that for us. The only thing, the only time we talk to them is when there's a problem, right? If we need a restore, we turn in a ticket. If there is some kind of an issue with IDS, they give us a ticket and let us know what's going on. But for the most part, that's invisible to us. You spin up your EC2 box in Amazon, you have none of that, right? And we because of our SOC 2 certification, have to prove that we have that stuff. So that's kind of a governing base layer for us, where we've got a checklist to fill out that says you have to have A, B, and C. But in somebody who's not using a framework like that can easily overlook that stuff, and you go basically naked into the public cloud without any of those network layer or management layer security features or safety features. If you don't actually go back and plan for that, then you end up, 6 months into it, getting a call from the FBI saying, "Why is your server trying to break into the bank?" Right? Because somebody has taken ownership of your server, and not that ever happened to me. So definitely take a look at the difference between what you're leaving and what you may be taking for granted in that environment, and where you're going, and make sure you're getting a one-for-one comparison. Even after we added back some new security tools into the Amazon stuff, we're still saving a pile of cash over the way we were operating in Rackspace. And part of it is just the economy of scale in AWS and the public cloud. And part of it is that we have this opportunity to optimize how we're consuming resources. So the move itself gives us a chance to a lot of the stuff that Jen just said, Michael wanted to do 3 years ago. So it's not that these are new ideas as far as how to change our infrastructure, right? It's that doing the move gives us the opportunity to make these choices.
Yeah, it's a good chance to clean up, right? What do we leave behind, right? So we left some things behind that we've had to replace, and there's other things that we're glad to leave behind. We use RabbitMQ for a growing part of our infrastructure, which means our DevOps guys have to manage this, right? We had a disk space alert like 2 weeks ago. That was not great. Well, why are they worried about disk space on a server, right? That they have other things they could be working on. And so going to cloud-hosted solutions lets them focus on other parts that are really specific to us, right? If we're getting low on disk space, yes, we need to know about it because we need to understand why as an engineering team, because you want to fix it if there's something that's going on. Same thing with Docker hosting. So we spent a lot of time kind of standing up our environments and managing all those parts that someone else is doing better, right? And it just frees you up to focus on other areas that are more valuable. And we've kind of touched a little bit on the take it with you. So, right, ripping everything apart wasn't really feasible. What were the small steps that we can start with and continue to make progress on? Our MSMQ is currently deployed with the app. It's getting pulled out, but we're not delaying the entire project for that. We still have the monolith. Every opportunity we have, everything that we're building is a new service. It's all deployed. We went to .NET Core and we're deploying with Docker, and every chance we have, we're ripping out that code and standing it up. But there's 8 years of code there. It's a lot of code. You can't just do it all. So everything that we have is going there. We'll eventually get where we need to go. SQL Server versus Mongo. So on the Snagajob side, they actually went completely away from SQL and they're all in Mongo. That's a huge lift, right? We use an ORM. We were just even talking about moving off of Microsoft SQL Server into like Postgres or something else. That's
Something other SQL?
some other SQL. that's one thing. I mean, you want to go completely over to Mongo, that's just a lot. Right, and so what can you look at as you slide over? We also have a single SQL Server instance. Right, this is not the time, and the risk there is too great. Like, that's something we're just going to take. We figured we can lift and shift that and handle that, because it would be such a large chunk that it would put the whole project at risk. So we figured out, if we just move the mirror and then we move our primary instance, how does that work? That at least gets us over there. Again, realizing the cost benefit from a business perspective, and then you can just continue doing the work, right? It's not something that one day it's like all tech debt. It's just ever growing, and you just have to keep chipping away at it. Anything else on this one?
Yeah, I think some of the technology choices might make sense to discuss here. So you are replacing or upgrading the data access layer, right? So you're changing that that layer, and just at least going to a new version. But the backend database stays the same, because, like she said, that rewriting for a different database backend jeopardized the whole project. That put us in the year 2020 getting done, and nobody has the patience for that. So how do we get over there and achieve a lot of savings? This is going to be a huge benefit to the CFO is closely watching this project, and he's very excited about it, because we showed him what the difference is between what it's going to cost here versus there. Even after we do a lot of improvements and add some extra stuff back in, we're still saving him a lot of cash. So he's excited. But what are the other kind of technology challenges or technology choices that you're making along the way? What's the good and the bad?
What was the DevOps is using instead of salt pillar files they're using?
So they're the infrastructure team in Greater Snagajob is Ansible, and they're moving to the Vault stuff from HashiCorp, yeah, and so there's obviously economy of scale for all of the infrastructure teams to be using the same automation language, the same services. So they're moving to that. So they're all Terraform, Vault, and Ansible, and as they build out the Amazon stuff, it's using those technologies, so that now you've got instead of 2 infrastructure guys that can work in this environment, you've got 8 or however many. The other cool thing about this project is those infrastructure teams are getting a chance to reimagine. A year and a half later, if I had the Amazon move to do over again, what would I do differently, right? So this actually, they're calling this environment Amazon 2.0 because there are some improvements and changes to how they use the AWS technologies that then are going to get pushed out to the rest of the organization.
Yeah, we've used this as a good opportunity to do some of the other tech debt, right? So we have newer stuff's Entity Framework, the monolith is still using in Hibernate, and there's been some interesting differences there, but it's moving, which is the important part. But we have upgraded, so we were hosting on Object Rocket on Mongo, and now we're going to shift over. So what does that look like? And we're talking about data purges. I mean, everyone's kind of in there looking at, do I move all of this data? Is there anything, I know, Michael, earmuffs, it's going to be hard for you, but some of that stuff, we have job applications that are abandoned, right? Somebody started an application and then never submitted, and it's 3 years later, they're not coming back. And so we've had to have this discussion of, is there value in that data or not? Is the value worth the effort to move over all those shards, or if we can reduce the size of that Mongo database, do we get, is it a little easier to move? So we've had a lot of good conversations about those types of things, or can we just move it over into our data warehouse, into the reporting server, and we can leverage it there, but we don't actually need it in our live production environment anymore. So those are things that we've had to look at, and it's actually one of the benefits of having a larger team involved, and the guys who have gone through it before is we've dedicated a lot of resources to this. We've got guys, the DBAs are working on it, we've got the infrastructure team, we've got engineers working on it. We've got a project manager to really kind of make sure that things are moving along, and just making sure that we're not getting a little excited about what we should do, and we're sticking to what has to be done.
I think we've been on the how slide for a little while.
You are, I'm not.
Yeah. No, I mean, as far as how we've been talking. So this is more kind of how things are going. We're part of the way through. Nothing's live in AWS yet, but we're well down the path of building out that first environment and getting that in the next, what's their target for rolling that? September?
10. We should be, our target currently to have the production platform out there is Q4. I say Q4, you like my vague?
For the whole thing or for the reports side?
Oh, the reports is actually supposed to have already been done.
Yeah.
It was due Q2.
Right. So, and that's part of what we want to talk about here. So that we highlighted that one reports area. This is going to roll out first, right? We're going to move that. We're going to see the value. Strangely enough, it wasn't as easy as we thought it was going to be. I know that surprises you, but there are some things that the team has to figure out. There's some the actual innards of the reports software that we're using is a lot more customized than what the people planning the project expected. So we've got some work to do to get that ready to move, and that's where it matters that we laid out a strong plan and a strong value prop at the beginning, because as we do start to hit roadblocks, have problems, have delays, everybody's still very, very committed to this because they've got eyes on the target, and they still believe that we can deliver these the savings, and they believe that they can't possibly continue forever having two different platforms with two different infrastructure teams, or two totally separate dev teams. So they know we have to keep plowing forward, and the resourcing behind this is staying there. We're moving out some timelines because we want to be safe and do it right. We sure don't want to impact customers by messing it up or by doing something in a way that that results in a breach of any kind. So.
And along those lines, so the data warehouse and the database part, right? Not everything has to wait until that's done. So it's not as if our timeline and all the dependencies are just a straight line. They've kind of spidered out. And so, right, my message to my team is I do not want to be a blocker. So if we can keep moving, just get our stuff out. And that way, no one is ever saying, well, that dev team's not done. So they can, we're opening doors for them to step through as they get there. So if there's stuff going on with the ETL and the reports piece, and moving one database server or mirror over to AWS, we're still pushing forward, pushing out underlying system changes. So we've already got moved to Cloud AMQP. So that's out. We did the first half of the services because, like we mentioned, there's about 20. So those are going out. We're doing all the libraries. We're upgrading and looking at the Mongo purge. All those parts are still happening and still going on. And that is making sure that no one's waiting for us. We also, interestingly enough, had, there was a whole team that wasn't under engineering. It was under tech services. It was our integrations team, third-party integrations. So think payroll, right? So our system, you hire someone, well, you need to send their data over to payroll. They weren't in engineering. So remember we talked about that first pass, and we kind of did the deeper dive, we got everybody in a room. You know who wasn't in the room? That team. So they have their own servers with their own Rabbit and their own Mongo and their own everything. And they weren't in the plan at all. As of April 1, they are under engineering. So that was a good, right? It was actually very fortunate to have them move under and say, hey, all this stuff has to be part of the plan. So we've actually adjusted the plan, and now we're working on making sure that they are included as well. So we have to adapt, right? Things change. We're mapping and prioritizing that tech debt. So we're trying to figure out, okay, hey, when our dev tier's ready, your stuff better be in there too. So we've just kind of readjusted everything. I mentioned, dedicating dev resources to that, right? Pulling off 2 people on the team and just putting them over just working on AWS. And making it a priority for that integrations team as well. So that is one of their quarterly deliverables, is to make sure, and it's a high priority one, and everybody understands why, they have to shift their workload to make sure that they're falling in with everything else, because they're a little behind, but they're going to have to catch up. We've also dedicated infrastructure resources on the DevOps team, and there's some other things that we've done to help that too. So our patches, our releases on some of the monolith parts are not as smooth and easy, right? They're not us just going in and pushing out through Docker. It takes time, and it's context switching. So what we said is, you know what, unless there's an emergency, we're going to slow that release cycle down just so that they're not distracted. So if they can have more time just focused on getting their parts done, that's valuable to us. So unless there's something that's really critical, let's just go to a monthly release schedule instead of bi-weekly. That should help them just focus and get things done. Right, we talked about mapping and prioritizing tech debt between what my team would love to do, you read it all, and right, what has to happen, and making sure that who's dependent on what pieces have to fall in place before the next steps can be taken. And then communication has been, I was in Oakland this week, right? Getting people excited about what we're doing on technology. Because they have to understand, and you have to keep beating the drum of saying, this is really important, this is going to get us where we need to be from a business perspective, and why, and how does that matter, and how's the progress coming? Yes, there's been some hiccups, but there's successes over here as well. Right? There's no project like this is going to go off without a hitch. There's always things that come up, but it's just making sure that you can continually point back to, we're still making progress towards our vision. We're making progress in these areas. Yes, there's been slowdowns here, but we're still overall on track and trying to get there. And reminding them, hey, we're already moving this piece, right? Anything that we can do to show value should reinforce that, right? The CFO loves those numbers. And then also, we get asked from customer meetings and that sort of thing too. And being able to answer them, giving those nice Q4 targets is always helpful too. We're looking at that for Q4 sometime, right? And already showing value of pieces that we've done and what is the outcome, right? What value did that give us already? Just so that you're not waiting for this big, giant project to be over. They're seeing wins, right? Not all are wins. There's some stumbles, but you also have to be really honest about that, right? Those communications, if we had gone in the very beginning and like, oh, it's going to be so easy and we'll be done in Q3, and it's all one big lift and shift and it's all this. It's not honest, right? We have been very clear about what the expectations are. When we go to the business reviews with leadership, it's always yes. It's a slog, and there's a lot of work there, and we're dedicating a ton of resources to it. But again, here's our vision. This is why we're doing this, and this is what it's going to get us. And we're already starting to see those benefits, and it's just continuing to beat that drum and sell it. They also, to shift, we've done along Adapt, right? We've switched out project managers, reassessed the whole thing based on how things are going, the whole timeline, who are the points of contact, and just kind of rechecking constantly as we go through. We run it much like we run the rest of our Scrum projects. I think we hit everything on there at some point.
Yeah, I'd call out the customer thing. If you're in a business that does have large customers on your solution, this is something that you've got to be ready for, right? Because as soon as you go to big customer who's used to bullying their providers, who will not be named, and say, great news, we're doing this migration, and it's going to stabilize the environment a lot. It's going to give us faster delivery times, blah blah blah. Somebody over there is going to say, oh well, I'm going to need to review the new architecture, and I'm going to you're going to need to justify that you're doing this in the right way, and it's not going to destroy my business. And the way you keep that from becoming a problem is go ahead and have that briefing material ready. You're not going to ask them approval for your architecture, right? But if you can say to them, hey, these are the things that are true in the existing environment, we're carrying this forward. Everything's going to be just as well checked and just as well secured and just as scalable and available, or even more scalable and available in this new model. You can stay ahead of that discussion and avoid getting bogged down into, oh, I need to approve your data center move now. So that's if you're like totally consumer-facing site, then every customer is one of a million people, and nobody has that kind of nobody feels like they have that kind of leverage over you. But if you are a big customer business where you've got large chunks of business coming from individual folks, that's definitely something to think of ahead of time and prepare for. Because if you stay ahead of that conversation, it's going to go smoothly. And if you let the customer back you into a corner, then that's gonna slow down your project, right? So.
And also, bigger customers need time to adjust, right? So if we're changing endpoints, we're changing anything, we're moving to a different SSO model, they have to know, because they have to plan within their own tech teams, right? So we can't just flip and expect that they'll just be ready to go. They're looking at 2018 timelines as well. They're looking at budgeting and project planning. And so getting in front of them and having this conversation lets them know that they're going to have to put something aside for Q1 or Q2, depending on how we're rolling it out. And getting in front of them in such a way where we're talking about the pros and how we're handling it, not necessarily asking them to review it, also shows like, hey, this is our relationship long term, and that's really worked out well. Questions? Look.
What do you wish you knew that we didn't say?
I'm starting to get nervous when we were getting fast, about 7 minutes in.
So Rob, you mentioned the customers, preparing them, especially your large customers that have a little bit of pull. Are you doing the same thing for your SOC 2 audits? Do you have the auditors engaged early on so that they know the moves happening and you're kind of going through the checklist?
Yes, exactly. So that's a great question. So if you looked at that original technology stack slide, you saw that the SOC 2 framework is live and in use on the pre one, not the post one. The one early in the deck. That's live and in use on the smaller platform and not on the bigger platform. So as we start moving stuff into here, we have to kind of reinvent how do we maintain that compliance. So the audit for this year from the SOC 2 providers is kicking off now. It started yesterday. But we started working with them in January to assess, okay, here's what's going to happen when we move. And that was a whole extra assessment project to say, how do we, not only how do we keep this compliant when it moves, but how do we look at making the whole stack, the whole company compliant with these standards, right? So, yes, absolutely, good question. They learned about this move at the same time that we were planning it, so that there wouldn't be any surprises. There's going to be surprises, but so there'd be fewer surprises.
This is where we're going, kind of on the way.
Well, if there's no more questions, Jen, Rob, I really appreciate you guys doing this. For a guy who's not technical at all, I thought it was a great primer. So I think that there's a lot of value for the presentation. We appreciate the PowerPoint as well, so we can put it online, kind of letting somebody know what they're up against and all the issues that kind of go along with that. So
Ernest is more technical than he lets
I
on.
know.
Would you agree?
but it did get me thinking. While I've got technical guys in the room, the guys at HashiCorp are always willing to send folks down to kind of talk and that kind of thing. And so I'm curious as to whether it might be time to bring somebody in from HashiCorp just to kind of have a presentation on some of the new tools they're deploying and that kind of thing. And if so, who do we want and why? So I just kind of You don't have to answer now, you can just kind of send me an email, no, you guys have my email, it's simply ernest@charlestondigitalreporter.com. I think that'd be kind of helpful, you know, and you know, so just a thought. I mean, what do y'all think? What do you think, Rob and Jen?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to hear. I mean, I think in the October timeframe we'll do a kind of code talks. So we want to kind of create a little bit of hybrid. So bring a couple of national guys in as well. You know, with the local guys. So we've done all local, we've done all national, and then maybe just do something that's kind of a hybrid, bring local and national. But this was very helpful, and certainly appreciate it. So thanks. We have some interesting. While I was sitting over here, and just I was standing back there. There's one presentation that I'd like to have, and we don't do this very often. And it came as a result of talking to Jen, and also talking to Elizabeth over at Booz Allen. You know, this perception that when companies are acquired, for some reason the community tends to think the worst and not the best. You know, so the reality is what's happened at Snagajob and at Booz Allen are actually pretty compelling stories. You know, the amount of investment these companies have made in the local economy. So I don't know when. We need to look at the schedule because we've got some, I think we're kind of scheduled out with the topics, including we're going to be hearing in September, Kristen, from Ceteris.
Yes.
So in September we're hearing from Levi, you know, who's gone through all the gyrations of building a successful company. Charleston moved out of Michigan, moved the company down here, taken about $12 million in capital, and has kind of grown the company, and it's gone through all the different iterations, successfully gone through the iterations. Then we're hearing about Keith, basically does a lot of audio engineering. Is going to talk about Alexa and all these tools. Google's, I can't even think of Google's the one they have. I mean, they're all out there right now. Where buy this, get me this, that kind of thing. But I think this is this is a very relevant topic to hear from the business guys about the level of investment that's been made in the community, bringing expertise into the community, that kind of thing. And we also, it's attractive to national players when this starts happening, where you have these acquisitions and investments in the community, as opposed to this perception when capital comes in, basically these companies are removed. I can tell you that for those companies that were removed, it's a pretty sad story because they no longer exist. So there's a reason not to take something out that's working. My best example is DLO. That was a very successful company that was acquired for $100 million by Philips, and 3 years later they shuttered the company and basically wrote down their investment. That's a lot of money, basically. And I guess Philips, if you're a global player, you can do it, but it's not unusual. So I appreciate you guys coming out. Just as you'll think about topics, the technical topics. I mean, I appreciate your advice. That'd be kind of helpful. I mean, Clint was over here talking about how he's dealing with people who are just doing initial cloud migrations. So this, in that regard, even this becomes helpful for that. The one question I have, I guess, and this is, I'm just curious, and not to be judgmental about things, but how do you rationalize the rate at which the big boys are moving, whether it's Azure or Amazon? How do you rationalize basically the business forecast for guys like a Medion, which are the local data centers that provide a valuable service? I'm just curious, because that's been kind of floating around in my head, just the value prop, of having sort of a hybrid infrastructure.
Oh, using Medion locally?
Yeah.
We do use them for some things, but not for our primary cloud. What the AWS offices, is... Yeah,
so there's a couple of good, the question is kind of why would I own my own infrastructure? Why would I colo somewhere at all, right? Part of what we're doing with iMedion is we do have corporate office infrastructure physically up there on King Street, right? And so they serve as a replication site for that. If we actually have some DR office space with them as well. So if we lose that King Street building, we have basically no downtime. We're a couple of hours to make that stuff the primary instance of everything, and the whole company keeps working. So that's the other thing that I've seen larger organizations do as far as colo and building out in a particular data center is SLA driven, right? If I've got a particular integration with somebody in a location, or if I've got to produce a certain amount of response time into a particular location, then it makes sense to go build and own my own stuff. I'm 100% in control of the capacity, the speed, the percent utilization on all of that stuff. So I see people doing that. I think that, it's just me looking at the marketplace. There is a lot of benefit to the whole elastic thing, right? Go to the cloud, but there are cases where you're still going to want to use physical infrastructure.
Well, thanks for that. If there's no other questions, Rob and Jen will be here for a minute. We started a new tradition of basically, since we now finally have a digital quarter shirts, and I know Michael's going to get one, so Jen's got one, so basically, and Rob, if we need to get you another size, just kind of let us know. And for those of you guys that are here and who wear T-shirts on the weekend, they're just kind of like me, who then jog around and walk the dog, basically. It's a perfect walk the dog shirt, so check it with Chris, and she's happy to get you a shirt. So I certainly appreciate you guys coming out. And I think this was just a terrific topic, and I can't wait to put it online and let more and more people we have. It's kind of hard to believe we've got about 80 of these videos now, and it's just a real nice reference library to go to if you guys want. So if you just go to Fridays of the Court on the CDC site, you'll see them all kind of come up. And I appreciate Mike recording them as always. So, thanks again. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And a quick plug, we have an open house. You can actually learn more about the stack and the people and the process. Like really come out, have a beer, and talk to the team.
Right,
August
or have a beer
8th,
and stuff.
5 to 8, because I am doubling the size of my team.
When is it?
August 8th, 5 to 8, 466 King Street. There's an Eventbrite out there, posting it everywhere, and it's Curtis also has it on his events page. But if you really want to talk more with the guys and what we're building and get a little more really in the details, come on out. We'd love to talk to you.
Or if you want to just hang out at the rooftop on King Street.
And sweat. It's August. We're going to sweat.
Where are you working close?